Hey everybody, welcome to the Luthierist Podcast. I'm Rhoney. On this week's episode of the show, we've got our interview with Michael Sankey, who is another Canadian friend of ours who is really pushing the envelope of what a guitar can be, and I think that everything he's doing is so cool. So I hope you're going to enjoy that. But first...
Corrections.
Hello, Luthierist listeners. This is Jason Rodgers. We really appreciate listening to episode 154 about finishing. And I wanted to put a little bit here at the beginning of our next episode, some corrections and some updates about some of the information you heard me talking about. First of all, yes, once again, that cool finish that looks like colored open pores is not, in fact, called pickling. It is what's known as a ceruse finish, C-E-R-U-S-E. And we really want to thank our local friend here, John Sonkson. John Sonkson, you can find him at Vicara Guitars, V-I-C-A-R-A. John has almost 2 decades of background in cabinet making and finishing, and he literally texted me after listening to the episode, and he's like, "No, ceruse!" And it's hilarious because we've talked about it so many times. I'll text him a picture, a screenshot of one of the Mayonnaise guitars, you know, the black with like the blue or red open pore, and it's just gorgeous. It kills me. And so he reminded me once again, it's ceruse. And there's a lot of resources online. It's a fairly simple process in concept. It takes a little bit of trickery in terms of timing, getting that colored pore fill to work right. But if you just search ceruse finish, I think you're going to find a lot of cool resources. Also, I had talked about the milk-based paint, the milk paints that Florian Schneider of Millimetrics is using. And yes, he was rolling it on, but Florian listened to the podcast and messaged me right away and wanted to give me an update that he is now doing some spraying with the milk paints using an HVLP gun. And he's been experimenting with different thinnings. Sometimes he thins it, sometimes he doesn't. It depends on the coat he's laying down. He says sometimes he'll thin the final coats to make sure it's nice and smooth. But it's definitely something that he's spraying now. He's also begun using a paint brand called Modern Masters. You're going to really have to check this out because they've got these metallic paints that are amazing, and they're water-based, which is really cool to see. So this is all stuff that he's drawn on from his furniture background. Also, over the top, he's using a German brand called Livos, and that's spelled L-I-V-O-S, and it's an oil. It looks like kind of like a true oil kind of thing. It's a linseed based thing, but it's eco-friendly. It's got really low VOC. It goes on easily. You can wipe it on, and he's been using that, but he's also been experimenting with some water-based top coats and spraying those on as well. So we want to make sure that the information we're giving you is accurate and up to date. And appreciate John Sonkson and Florian Schneider getting back to me with those corrections. All right, enjoy this show. It's a great interview with Michael Sankey. Thanks.
Some explosion special effects if you press the button.
Yeah. And all the like wah, wah, trumpets, you know, all that stuff.
Toilet flush sound. Yeah.
Yeah.
Should use that after many things that I say, the toilet flush.
Yeah. Edit out my own coffee pouring.
So,
That's about to happen.
Coffee slurping, tea slurping.
So,
Got
welcome
it.
to the Luthierist Podcast. I'm Jason Rodgers.
I'm Paul Rhoney.
And today, with us today is Michael Sankey.
That's
And
me.
we're talking to you from across the continent.
Yeah.
Pretty much, yeah.
We're
You guys
here-
are in Portland, right?
We're in the Portland area, yeah.
I've heard it's a really neat place.
It
Yeah.
is.
Someday I will go visit.
Yeah. Well, you can stop by anytime. You're welcome. So yeah, as we were just saying, as Paul was saying, you know, your work is a little new to him. I've been following you for a few years now, and I'm trying to remember exactly the order of events that led me to your work. And however I clicked on this person and they mentioned you and that person, and however it got to you, when I found your work, you were already pretty deep into the world of multiscale, the world of ergonomic design, the world of headless instruments, and a lot of very unique one-off design instruments with any number of strings, plus extra strings sticking out the side, and it's beautiful organic shapes, and I'm a big fan of all of those aspects of building. But really, where'd you get started? You've been doing this for a little while now.
While. This is actually my 20th year of building.
Okay, so
guitars,
understand that. Yeah.
Oh, yeah. Well, you look like a young guy. Like, so you started at a young age.
It's really cold up here. I'm well preserved. You know, you put a steak in the freezer and it stays good for a good long time. Seriously, it snowed like a foot just today. Anyway, yeah, I'm in Ottawa, Canada. Yeah. Just so you know. Okay. But I am 40. I've been doing this since I started in university, actually. Yeah. I was studying visual art, and we had a fantastic sculpture workshop. Actually built into the visual art faculty was built in what used to be a seminary school, and it had this lovely high-ceilinged chapel attached to it. Built 130 years ago or something like that. And so the chapel ended up being the wood shop. It was a really nice place to work. Yeah. And so I while building the sculptures and things like that, I was also able to sort of use the machinery to start trying to learn how to build instruments. And of course, being a university, I have a fantastic library, so I was able to find some library resources there. Yeah, like when I started building guitars, the internet was not really a thing people could use. It's just a couple of people. You could. What do they call them? BBS boards and
oh God.
Yeah. AOL chat was the latest thing. Or I don't even know. I didn't use it. So yeah, it was like books, and that was the way to learn.
What were the books you had?
Well, I mean, the ones I took out from the library, primarily the Cumpiano and Nadelson's guitar building one. That's
the
like
Bible.
Yeah. With that, yeah. And there were a few older ones. I think Siminoff and is it Teeter or something? Don Teeter, is it? No.
I think
you're right. Yeah, that was like a repair manual, I think.
Yeah, a repair manual with all sorts of terrible ideas.
Yeah, the one that kind of went down in history is like, oh, maybe let's not do this anymore.
Yeah, well, but also, I mean, being able to view historical instruments in the university library. They had some really neat books about like musical instruments in the Baroque era, and so
wow.
See, pictures of Stradivarius's guitars and like really nice detailed color photos of this stuff, because it was it was like an art reference kind of thing. And so I guess maybe that was inspirational, but I don't know.
What did those first instruments that you made look like? Or were you already starting to go in the direction that your instruments have?
Oh yeah.
Now?
I mean, absolutely. From the beginning, I knew I didn't want to do just your usual stuff, because I mean you can buy that, right? Or I mean somebody could buy it. I couldn't. That's why that's another part of why I started making them, is because having to like buying a nice guitar, you'd have to like get off your ass, get a job, get paid money, and then you'd have to take all that money and you spend it on a guitar. I was like, no, I'll just make. So the first one, I decided let's just go big or go home. It was an archtop guitar with, it was like a fully acoustic, but it had 2 electric pickups and piezo pickup.
Oh, wow.
And, Bigsby tremolo. And I was just like, everything I could find.
It's fun to sync too, and let's get it.
Yeah. There's one rattling around in there if you shake it. But I still use it. Actually, it's a really nice instrument.
Cool.
It looks like, I don't even know. Somebody dragged it out of a sewer, but it plays well enough. And because that being a builder, you also have to learn to do repairs too. And so that was sort of my guinea pig for, let's see what it's like to replace frets, kind of thing. How do you replane a fingerboard? How do you do this, do that? So. But I mean, it was also like literally made out of garbage.
It was like scrap wood that was around it.
Yeah, there was some just bits of bits of plywood, or the top is made out of a piece of Western red cedar decking. You know, I just sort of went to the lumber yard and found a piece that looked sort of quartered. I was like, yeah, I can make this work, and glued a few chunks together, and there you go. But yeah, I mean, already.
Well, how much of it was like built based off of the instructions that you found in the books versus like there was things you improvised on maybe?
Oh, I improvised almost everything. I mean, it was. I mean, yeah. Again, all the instrument manuals at the time basically just told you how to do a flat top. You know, and I had been told several times, you know, learn the basics first, then expand from there. But I was like, no, I'm just gonna go for it. So yeah, actually one of the influences I would say was my father was an amateur musician for many years, and he was involved with the Baroque music sort of Renaissance scene, I guess.
Yeah.
So he had a viola da gamba
Cool.
that he'd made himself when he was in university in England way back in the day. And a viola da gamba is more closely related to a guitar than, say, you know, a cello or a violin is. It has a flat back. It's, you know, 6 strings tuned very similar to a guitar, a similar scale length.
Does it have the gut frets like an arpeggione?
Yes, exactly, and it's fretted, but a carved top, quite a high carve and a high bridge. Anyway, so my dad had one of these that he'd made, and it was really quite nice. So I sort of, lacking any other examples, my first few instruments were informed mostly by that viola da gamba.
Oh, wow.
Because living where I do, Ottawa is a pretty big city. It's the capital of Canada. There's you know, almost 1 million people around here. But I had no source of like, I didn't know anybody who had an archtop guitar. The only thing I could do would be to go to the, you know, the music stores in town. There's a few of them, and you know, I'd look at like a Gibson ES 125 or something with a plywood top and be like, well, maybe this is an archtop guitar. Strum. Not really. So actually, yeah, I mean, the best examples I could find was, I was like overjoyed where I found one used shop that had 2 harmonies from the 60s.
Totally.
And I was like, wow, these are like archtop guitars. These sound a lot better than those Gibsons. You know, let's see how it makes these tick, and, you know, spend a little while looking at them and trying to figure out how that works. So yeah, I had very limited learning opportunities, I guess.
So at what point in time did you decide, like, well, I'm going to go ahead and do this as a living, as a job?
You know, that's actually a question I haven't really asked myself. It's been a gradual process, and you know, life always sort of throws things at you. Like, so I think after I was finished with the university, with my Bachelor of Fine Arts degree, which colloquially is known as the BFA, or Bachelor of Fuck All. And I was like, okay, so what am I going to do? I'm going to go and get a job as in, like, who accepts resumes for wanted, you know, conceptual artist? Not going to work out. So I did decide, I think after university, I was going to try and spend a little time building a few good instruments and seeing if I could make a living. But really, that was just more learning experience. And at the end of a couple of years, and I made some, you know, a couple more arch tops, and not really made any sales and stuff. And my wife was ready to start a family, and I was like, okay, let's do that. And so I had to, you know, go get a crap job. And so yeah, I mean, it's been a partnership. The way me and my wife have worked, you know, one of us would have a job, one of us would be taking care of kids, and just whoever's got the better job at the time does that, and whoever takes care of the kids does that. So it's only been the past, I'd say, you know, sort of 7 or 8 years that I've been, you know, primarily an instrument builder. You know, up till this point, it's always been just sort of a little of this, a little of that, build when you can. And yeah, so when we finally moved into a house where I was like, I can build a workshop, I can work in here, and I'm gonna do this. So I've only been doing that for 7 or 8 years, I guess.
What does your workshop look like these days? Like, You know, are you? I'm guessing you're largely handcrafted, or am I mistaken? And it's, you know,
no, it's very low tech.
Okay.
Despite the appearance of the instruments, partly because I'm a cheapskate, you know, and you know, high tech tools and lots of that. It costs money. It takes space. I don't have to, you know. I'm lazy. Come on. Give me a break. So, you know, I have a nice band saw. I have a small Laguna band saw, but the rest is, you know, not even that many hand tools, but decent ones. Yeah, I mean, it all fits in my garage, basically. I converted my garage into workspace, which around here is actually kind of a big deal because you have to insulate it. You have to heat it. It has to be vapor barriered. It has to, you know, because you have to make a sealed box. Otherwise, you know, in the winter, everything's going to dry out to, you know, 2% humidity. And in the summer, you're just going to swelter. So, you know, it's a 10-foot by 20-foot garage with some nice lighting and decent insulation and a workbench in the middle and a bunch of wood on one wall and a few tools that are enough to make it work.
Wow.
Well, looking at, so I'm just flipping through your gallery right now on your website, which is www.sankeyguitars.com. The contouring on some of these instruments is really extraordinary. I mean, you've got some good examples of there's an SG shape that just went by. There's some more sort of traditional looking stretched out, you know, double cutaway instruments, single cutaway. But then every now and again, there's something like the Veracity that is that instrument just, I mean, first of all, it's got that very much Klein-esque sort of amorphous or new shape.
Yeah.
But I mean, there's so much, like the back is scooped. There's just all these, I mean, very, very heavily contoured on the top. Just these gorgeous intersections of lines. That's a lot of handwork. I mean, so is that files? Is that rasps? Is that planes? How are you doing that?
Well, it's funny you should say that because just a few weeks back, I got a comment. Somebody commented on the photo on Facebook, and they're like, "Every time I see one of these, I want to take away his belt sander."
Oh no!
And I was like, "Well," I wrote back maybe a slightly snarky comment saying, "Actually, no belt sanders involved. I use spoke shaves, and planes, and chisels, and gouges. It's faster for me to do that stuff by hand. It honestly is. Every guitar I make is basically one of a kind. You know, you can probably see sometimes I'm revisiting ideas or doing something that's you know, similar to something that came before. But I mean, since I'm not using any templates, I'm not using any standard. I don't have any models at all. No models, no serial numbers. Just, you know, the guitars get names and they are one of a kind. So it doesn't make sense to do too many templates or jigs. It certainly doesn't make sense to, you know, CNC anything because, I mean, the time spent programming, you know, it's just a hell of a lot faster when you pick up some sharp piece of metal and just hack away at it.
I really look forward to your posts of your instruments because I'm always inspired by the shapes. It's the type of kind of freedom that I really wish I had the guts to do.
It's not a matter of guts. Well, it's not a matter of creative guts. It's a matter of fiscal guts because these ones don't, you know, they don't necessarily, they wouldn't necessarily sell. I mean, most of what I've been doing is commissioned work. So, you know, people have seen some pictures of what I do and they ask, you know, well, I'd like something sort of like this, but, you know, have a little freedom with the design. And somehow I've managed to build up some of a reputation as a person who can do this kind of stuff. And the clients are, you know, tend to be allowing me to have some leeway to do it. But also it partly just comes from you just have to be able to say, no, I'm not going to do that. But you also have to be, you know, good at persuading people that actually making it sort of this shape and contouring that would make it better for you. Here's why. So, it takes a lot of, talking it through with the clients. But that's sort of it. Is sometimes you see my more avant-garde stuff is made because the client was like, go for it. And then sometimes the most avant-garde stuff is because I'm tired of being held back by clients who are a little conservative. I'm just like, I just want to do this for myself and see where it goes.
So, like, for example, I'm looking at your Dove, which again is that more ergonomic shape, that very, very asymmetrical shape. But it's actually has is it a spruce top on this?
Yeah.
And that it's this beautiful crescent, like for lack of a better word, sound hole on the upper bout. So, like, take that guitar for example. Where did that one start and end? Was that with a customer in mind, or was that just like, I'm going to build this and make this amazing?
Well, that one actually is from a client who he ordered 2 instruments at the same time, basically, from me.
Fantastic.
And they were based on designs I'd done earlier. So that Dove one is basically a redo of an instrument called Peekaboo that I'd done several years earlier. But I changed a few things around, and they had some requests. They wanted to have some things done a little differently. But overall, they were like, I really liked Peekaboo. Can you make me something like that with a couple of small changes? And again, Peekaboo, I think, was that one came from a client who just said, basically, I want an ergonomic guitar that's semi-hollow. What can you do? And so I drew a few examples. Is typically what I do. Take some big sheets of paper and I'll draw a few out. Usually I give them a couple of proposals, not just one. Sometimes more than that. And say, which one do you like? And they'll say, oh my God, I love the middle one, but can you have the sound hole look like that other one? And, and then I'll sort of revise and revisit. So it's a collaborative process. And at its best, you end up with something that makes both of us really happy.
It's great that you have that kind of freedom at times with your customers, because that where people you have the renown where people know what you're able to. Well, really it is. It's people understand what you're able to accomplish with your experience, your background, your skills, and they trust you with that. That's pretty cool.
Let's not get too.
Come on, dude. Toot your horn here. Awesome. It's all right.
Well, so because let's be realistic. There's not that many clients, and it's always a struggle to find customers. So it's not like I have. I have renown among all 6 avant-garde headless players in North America. There's really not that many of them.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the headless. When did you head down that road?
That's a good question. One of my early headless instruments, which you can probably find on the website, was called Rippling Brook, and that was from a local performer and teacher, a well-known and like fantastic guitar player. But he was like, he's the kind of guy who's playing 8 hours a day because he's teaching all morning and then he's practicing all afternoon, and then he's gigging all night. And so he was getting some, repetitive stress injuries. And so at the time I was working at a music store as their repairman, and he brought in some instruments for me to do some maintenance on. And then he asked, could you maybe build something that's sort of like those Klein ergonomic guitars? Maybe that would help me with my shoulder problems that I'm having. And I said, I'd love to tackle something like that, because I did. I'm always interested to try something different. Partly that aspect is that if you do something that's more derivative of classic styles, the competition is tough,
Yeah.
You want to make a flat top guitar? There's like thousands of people out there who are making flat top guitars probably better than you. So,
we've had that conversation several times in the
yeah,
last year or
exactly.
so.
So one way to sort of sidestep that whole issue is to just be like, I don't build flat top guitars. I only build, guitars in the shape of the state of Texas. Like, like that's what you do is you say, this is my niche. I build what the other people can't.
Yeah.
And
the
so
there,
maybe you got,
yeah.
there's less competition, but there's fewer potential buyers. But it just happened that, this guy was really cool to work with. And I got to build this amazing headless instrument that was ergonomically shaped. And I think that was the first one I made. And I guess I kind of liked it. And I liked the fact that it was different. So, yeah, why not?
Yeah.
So go ahead, Jason.
No, I was going to also, because I build with multi-scale. So I'm always interested in when and where and how people got into the choice to start employing multi-scale in their builds.
Actually, that's a good question. I'd probably have to look at my sort of timeline to find out when was the first multi-scale instrument I did. I honestly don't know, but it was quite a few years ago. And it would have been one of those things where I'd seen some picture on the internet and just thought, wow, that looks so cool. I've got to try it. Because that was the first thing is it looks different. It's striking. It's it stands out. And functionally though, I got to say, like for a 6-string guitar, it's like, yeah, it doesn't, it's nice, but it's not essential. But you start getting 7 strings. Actually, that was it. There was that same guitar, the Rippling Brook one that I did, that he wanted an ergonomic instrument. He wanted a really short scale, like really short. And I said, and it's a 7-string instrument. I said, that's not going to work.
Bad idea.
Like, yeah, you don't want that low B to be, a 23-inch scale. It's going to sound like crap. So we came up with, well, what about we try this multi-scale idea that we've seen out there? And so the low B ended up being a more normal scale length, and the high end is nice and short, and it worked out well. So that, I guess, was probably the first one I made. Because you get over 6 strings, especially when you're up to 8, it's pretty much essential to have a bit extra in the bass, I find.
Yeah, that's the conversation I have with people at guitar shows where they're like, why would you do this? And I say, well,
because everybody asks, right?
Yeah,
like,
yeah. Why is it tilted? And what I tell them is that on a 6-string, my 6 strings, I play the scales 25 to 26. Yeah. And I give them the references on where that is, with what they would know. 25 is generally what PRS and what Carvin has done in the past. 26 is a little bit longer than a Fender scale. And I said, on a 6-string, it's nice. You get a little bit more snap in the low end. But I always say where multi-scale really shines is in the drop tuning and the extended range stuff.
And also if you're doing guitar shows, you put one of those up on your stand so that it gets people to stop and come over and introduce themselves. That's it. Don't underestimate it. It's a real thing. Like if you're, displaying your instruments, and also even if you've got a small display in a store, you have to do something that's really eye-catching and eye-popping and makes people question things, because otherwise they just walk right past, unless they recognize the name or something. You need to have something else going for you. And I don't have any name recognition really, so I need to put something that's visually arresting. So that's what I do. Every guitar show I do, I always make sure I have at least one thing that is maybe a little impractical, but makes people stop and go, whoa, what is that?
I think you definitely managed to do that.
It's a free marketing tip.
Yeah, absolutely. I know I've never made a multi-scale instrument, but every time I do guitar shows and I hang out with Jason at one of his shows that he's showing at, without a doubt, there's somebody that shows up and just says, I've never seen a guitar like that before. Why are the frets like that? Every single time, without fail.
I'm looking at your website still here, and I'm looking at the Tortoise, and it seems like the Tortoise is a headless multi-scale archtop, and it seems like it really kind of brings everything that you do and have done together. And it's talk about something that you'd stop and stare at, on a stand at a show.
Exactly.
It is so stunning. Just again, that using the upper bout gap as sound hole. And then I was telling Paul about this the other night when we were talking about getting you online here. I'm like, and he did this guitar where the whole side is one piece of wood that's bent from the tip of the cutaway all the way around the body. And it's just, when I saw that, when you posted that, when I saw that, I'm like, oh my God, he did. Like, look at that.
I've actually, I've one-upped myself. The latest guitar that I brought to NAMM was a similar kind of shape and idea, but it's a laminated 3-ply sides. So there's 3 pieces all bent entirely around the body and then glued together after the fact. And that was a bit tough. But yeah, it was
lots of calls there. Lots of calls and gluing.
No, I vacuum
cool.
glued it. To be honest, it didn't work absolutely perfectly. There's one spot where you can see a little gap, and it bugs me. But oh well, you can't get it perfect. This is the problem: is if every guitar you're making is a prototype, if every one I'm doing is trying out some crazy new idea, they don't always work, and sometimes you got to spend a little time to perfect the process, so to speak. But oh well, what am I going to do? Throw the thing in the trash? It's already a functional instrument, so whatever. There it is.
Yeah.
Take it or leave it, warts and all.
It's that Japanese thing about wabi sabi, about things just not being perfect, and like have you heard about that?
Yeah,
thing
but a lot of the people who say that's kind of false modesty. It's like, come on, Irvin. You're telling me this isn't perfect. Sure, it's not. You look with a microscope over here.
Yeah. So your designs, like you've got kind of an aesthetic that I would say is your own thing, but what are some of the design inspirations that you have that maybe come outside of the guitar world or inside the guitar world? Like, are there other guitar makers that you look at and you're like, I like what he does, it'd be cool to do something similar to that? Or are you looking at cars or modern art, or what is like the things that sort of like getting stuck in your head that make you want to make an instrument?
It might surprise you, but very little, I would say, of the outside world influence what I do. I mean, I love nature and natural shapes. I've done a few instruments lately where I'm using the natural live edge of the wood and incorporating that into it. But I can't say that I got that inspiration by walking through the forest. It happened when I had the slab of wood on my bench, or when I was walking through the lumber yard and I saw a piece of timber, and I was like, I see a guitar in there, and I want to just leave that there. So no, the biggest, I guess, impetus to creativity, or the biggest influence on creativity, is just picking up a pencil and drawing and watching the shapes take place. The shape on its own will tell you if it's right or not. And the wood itself will tell you what it wants to be, or not. So I can't say directly. Like I know I see a lot of instruments where you're like, oh, cool, they're totally inspired by like 50s Cadillac fins or something. Like you can see, or they're so like into the late Art Deco, blah blah blah, or certain people you can definitely tell where what their primary sort of aesthetic influence is. But with me, it's sort of it's the act of drawing itself. They're kind of abstract works. Why would you put something else in it? Yeah, it's more like abstract art. It is its own thing. It is not a representation of something else in any way.
Yeah, I think I'm always reminded of design by committee. People talking about like, what I mean? Like, but you're very much the opposite of that. It's like, it's all from your head. It's the one inspiration. And I think that's probably what makes it work so well. Like, I'm really not a proponent of the design by committee thing.
Wait,
I'm like, no, give me
but
control.
as you see,
you know,
they are kind of designed by committee because I often have clients putting input into it.
Mm-hmm.
But, yeah, as you say, the skill is in the balancing the needs of the client with the just putting your own will
Mm-hmm.
to make it, a Sankey instrument, not something else.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I guess some people would have trouble with that, but it hasn't been too hard to do it myself, because no matter what I do, at least it looks like I made it, even if it was strongly influenced by something somebody else wanted to do.
Yeah. That's very cool. I don't know.
When
Jason looks like he's trying to find something.
Yeah, no, I
He
again,
just
I'm
saw something. He was like, "How does
Huh?
that?" What?
keep finding. So we just the other night we recorded a show that's I think it's coming out today about finishes.
Yeah.
And so if you're trying to achieve that very, like, I'm looking at your corduroy electric guitar, that's one, it's like basically one piece body of hemlock, and it's got this, you've done whatever you've done brushing it, whether it's sandblasting it or whatever, it looks like driftwood,
Yeah.
and you
That
don't
was
want,
intentionally. Yeah. Okay. So there's a little bit of natural organic influence.
yeah,
But I mean, again, I wasn't imposing my idea on the wood. It was that I had the wood, and I was like, oh, the stuff, the early wood is so soft.
Right.
That's just going to look like crap so soon. What could I do? Oh, I know. I could just take away some of the early wood, and then it wouldn't get dinged. And then thought, well, that would end up looking sort of like driftwood. Can I make it gray? No, turned out I couldn't make it gray, but I could make it have the texture. So it took a little experimenting to get that, the corduroy or driftwood texture. Because sandblasting, I brought a few scrap pieces to a sandblasting outfit, and they were like, wow, that's a really cool idea. And they tested it out for me with sand, which was way too strong. And they tried it with baking soda, which is a lot more gentle, but still way too strong. Didn't work. So I ended up using a stiff nylon bristle brush, like a rotary brush on a drill, and just, and it would just sort of compress and abrade and burnish away the soft early wood. And so that ended up giving me the right texture.
so
It took a little experimenting, though.
what kind of finishes then are you using to maintain the cleanliness and the color of the wood, but still keep that just gorgeous tactile experience?
Mm-hmm. For quite a while, I've been using something called Aus Oil Sealer. It's sort of an oil varnish blend. It's natural oils and things. It smells a lot like the stuff we used to use in art school called stand oil, which is sort of a modified linseed oil. It's got a little bit of resins and things in it. So I just use that. It's a, rub on, wait a little while, let it soak in, then wipe it off, wait a couple of days, do it again, go back over it with fine steel wool, and sort of, just build up an oil finish. So that's what I've been using for almost everything. I have done a bit of French polish, which, I'm so at, but that's hard work. So that's and I tried just once in one of my recent instruments, I did a Nitrocellulose Lacquer, which, it looks fantastic, but I'm like, I kind of miss, the whole tactile quality. Yeah. I mean, it feels nicer than polyurethane or something, but it's still, you're not really feeling the wood in quite the same way. Mm-hmm. But it is so shiny. It's like, I kind of like it, but I kind of don't. So I'm a little on the fence about that.
It's a real battle that I have, because I've developed a finish with just a shellac splash coat and a tung oil, just something off the shelf. And it looks great. So it's warm. It's you get all the grain through there. It's not sticky. You don't. Yeah. It always feels like wood, but it's not durable. It just isn't. And so, I've got a guitar right now that I finished a couple of years ago that it tends to be the instrument that people want to try out at guitar shows. Like, oh, can I play that one? Yeah. And so it's got
that's the one that's beat up.
It's got
Well, I
some
tell you what, you gotta
scuff
step
marks on the
up from
front.
your plain old tung oil, and you got to use one of these modified ones. There's a few products out there that are designed for this kind of thing, and they're substantially tougher. I mean, they're not protective in the way that a film finish is, you know,
Yeah.
where it can, you know, a glancing blow will just bounce off without leaving a ding. It's still wood, but the point is it retains its color, it retains its appearance, even if it's, you know, being played a lot and handled a lot. It doesn't just sort of rub off on your hands like a raw tung oil would. So you can step it up, and it keeps the same tactile quality and the same ease of use.
This is I'm using Form Bs, and so it's one of those. I think it's called a drying oil. It's not pure, you know, boiled linseed or something like that. But yeah, it's whatever it's on. Whatever the wood is beneath it is going to scuff and scratch. So this is a walnut top, and just, you know, it's got pick marks.
The other thing you got to do, you got to choose your players. Get those guys who like to keep it in a nice wood paneled studio and take it down every once in a while and
Find
play
the
with a nice snifter of cognac. You know, none of these people who play the snot out of the instruments.
So I'm curious, like 20 years on doing this, are there sort of trends and things that you've noticed that have changed? Like, do people ask for multi-scale now more than they used to, or headless now more than they used to? You know, your satin finish more than they used to, or is it, or has it kind of always been that you establish yourself doing a certain thing and it's largely stayed, you know, consistent?
Yeah, I think I would say probably more of the second thing. I mean, people like me and you guys too, in a sense, we're, you know, these small scale boutique guitar makers. We're not doing huge volume. We're not changing the tastes of the population at large, but we're the taste makers for the people that the population at large looks at. So what we do gets followed by, you know, other bigger fish, and that's who, you know, the masses are looking at. Like
several steps removed.
Yeah, exactly. So you know, we're like the fashion designer who's, you know, does the runway show in Paris, and, you know, who's actually at that show, who's actually buying, you know, the $20,000 pair of pants. You know, not me. But it trickles down, you know, through a few years and a few steps removed. It gets, you know, and eventually it reaches the public consciousness. So just this year, actually at NAMM, I noticed many more headless guitars and multi-scales than I had imagined was possible. And several people also mentioned that. They're like, oh, you're making headless guitars. I've noticed quite a few more of those in the past few years, you know, especially this year is more than ever. So it's really, that's starting to hit the mainstream, which kind of worries me, because now I'm going to have a lot more competition. I'm going to have to do something even newer that anyway, I don't know what I'm going to do.
A headless and bodiless guitar.
I've done that, actually. I've done a few of those. I've done headless, bodiless, fretless guitars.
Oh.
It
So
was
it was just
stick,
strings floating in air.
with strings. Well, no, I mean, it was a stick of wood.
It's called a washtub bass.
Yeah, but you know what? That was a really cool instrument. It's fun to play. But and yeah, I ended up selling one of them. But the guy was like, "Oh, your minimalist instruments are so cool, but can you put frets on it?" I was like, "Will you pay for it?" Then yes. So yeah, you got to do what you got to do.
Yeah. Is the minimalism thing more out of, you've said a few times that just fiscal and lazy and these things, and is it more that, or is it more you know, that's your aesthetic, or is it both? I mean, is it like, where does that all kind of come from? How is that informed?
It's a little of all things. I mean, for one, yeah, busy stuff just aesthetically is, you know, not interesting to me. I'm not interested in the details, just aesthetically, visually, myself, or philosophically. You know, I'm thinking more not micro design, macro design, like the shape of the whole instrument, the shape of the sound of the instrument in big terms. I want to see what it is. I don't want it to be obscured by detail. And that's just, and that's fine. Some people, they're detail people, and so they might keep the same body shape, but they vary wood choices, or they just do those little decorative, or like the bindings will be just right, or their bridge design will be just so. And I'm like, well, what if I don't care what shape the bridge is, as long as it goes with the body, and the body is going to be something completely different. So yeah, I'm thinking more big picture aesthetics than small picture. And again, tone wise as well, I'm not trying to refine the perfect thing where people will be like, well, this one sounds more like a 1955 D18 and this one's more like a 1951. It's like, let's not do that. Let's just make the instrument, and it will have its voice, and its voice will be its own.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You could say I sound like somebody else, or you could say I was born this way. And that's, in a sense, it's easier to make instruments that way because you're not trying to reproduce something that's already there or improve something that's already there. You're just saying, here it is, love it for what it is, or not. And there are a lot of nots.
But then you have to have the customers that see on that level too, because those customers that are looking for something that sounds and feels like in 1959, whatever.
Yeah, they don't come to me.
Yeah, you're hoping
plenty
that
of other builders who can fulfill that niche for them. So
you're hoping that people are seeing that big picture with you. And I think that's a great way to go about it. Is especially if you don't want to go down any of those rabbit holes of imitation and attempting to draw attention away from what somebody else is doing very well already. You can probably bang your head against that wall for a long time before you realize that it's not worth it.
Yeah,
I do suppose so.
So, Michael, there was a post that you put on Facebook recently, and I think it really kind of summarizes some good stuff that we're talking about here. So the picture, I think, was your feet up on your suitcase in the airport heading home.
Yeah.
And here's what you said. I'm just going to read your post here because you're saying some really good things about the sort of the fine edge that people ride in terms of what NAMM means to them, and just what it means to really trying to define who you are as a builder and as an artist, and sort of the pitfalls and how you ride that line, and sometimes you fall to one side or the other. So here's what you say. Post NAMM. I wish I were able to put an exclamation mark on my experience here. I wish I could say that it was a definitive success, wrap it up in a bow, and go home ready to tackle the next project. But that's not how it always works. There will be emails to write and answer, and they won't always have a satisfying conclusion. Deals often take time. Promises aren't always kept, but to be a luthier means you just keep grinding through it. In the end, there's lumber on the racks and sharp tools by the bench, and the guitars won't build themselves. I think that's a fantastic summary. So what kind of state of mind were you in when you wrote that?
Well, just as I was sitting in the airport on my way back from NAMM. So yeah, this is LAX Terminal 2. And I was thinking, how do I summarize the experience? And honestly, I was about to hit send, and then I decided I better add that last sentence, or I'm going to come off as being really depressed and bitter. Because it was a bruising experience. I guess maybe I went in there with high expectations.
Was this your first NAMM show?
Yeah. I was part of the Boutique Guitar Showcase,
okay.
Which is it's a really awesome place to be. because you got all these other cool guitar makers around you, and you just it's like a little art gallery, and it's a little quieter. It's an oasis of awesome guitars in this show that is unimaginably big and corporate and just ruthlessly competitive. And I was amazed to be confronted by the full reality of how big the music industry is, because almost all of it is there at NAMM. And but yeah, I think I was going in maybe with expectations that were a little too high, hoping that I would sell a few instruments or make some deals. I'm actually, I was trying to find some dealers who'd be willing to take my creations in, around the world, because I want to start doing fewer of the commissions and more of my own work. I think I do my best work when I've got free reign to do what I want. And certainly I can sort of push the boundaries forward the most. Yeah. So I brought, a few of these more out there kind of instruments to the show, 4 of them. And, I killed it with like publicity and the audience, and like there were so many people came by my table. I was engaged. I was on top of it. I answered so many questions. I had so many photos taken.
I saw some cool video of, I can't remember which magazines were reporting on it, but folks that were coming by your table and mentioning your stuff.
Yeah, I did get a lot of press, and to go home at the end of it, and I'm leaving with actually more guitars than when I arrived.
Wait, how does that work?
Well, I had one of them shipped ahead to another store in Texas, and they didn't want it, so I said just send it to NAMM and I'll meet it there. So I was bringing home 4 guitars, and and a few leads, a few maybes, a few potential things that might happen, but nothing concrete. And that was kind of what bugged me, was that I was like, I would have loved to be able to go there and say, I came away with this deal. I can just walk in the front door after a long day of airplanes and say, hey, honey, I brought home that piece of bacon, it's bread on the table. And I didn't. Yeah. And that's just the way it goes sometimes. And it's bruising to one's ego. It makes you question, why, like, am I barking up the wrong tree? Am I just not? I think it's important for us to as Luthiers to question this, because we love what we do. We always, try and put a brave face on it, and our, Facebook posts and Instagram posts are, oh, yay, I'm working on this. I'm yay, I love my job. Yay, I hurt Lutherie. Sorry, Megan Wells is, I hurt Lutherie. Don't take it that she's lovely. Just a super cool chick. But, we don't always feel I hurt Lutherie. Sometimes you're like, ugh, I'm doing all this and it's not really connecting with very many people. And that was the headspace I was in, was that maybe, my creativity is not necessarily gelling with, with an audience. That being said, with all those photos being taken and all those articles being done, I give it 3 months before I start seeing a bunch of guitars pop up on the internet that look a lot like mine. Just saying, there were a lot of people from, I don't know, the Far Eastern parts booths and things like that who liked my table a lot and took a lot of very detailed photographs. And anyway, that's the way it goes. So yeah, that was just it. Is let's acknowledge that this is a tough job. We're not all seeing success, even if sometimes, we might feel like we are, like, oh, so-and-so's a big name, but, well, like I got to meet Steve Klein while I was down there, and, he was like, wow, it's an honor to meet you, man. And I was like, what? Other way around, dude. He's not living in, Bel Air with a Tesla in the garage. He's just a dude who keeps having to grind out the work. There's no, respect is not a substitute for money in your pocket. And I'd rather a little more of the balance, the former.
Well, I actually really appreciate your honesty and candor on that. I mean, I've felt that a lot as well. You know, having had certain successes in my career and seen and felt like, oh man, top of the game over here right now.
Yeah,
you know, and
really. I've made it, but no.
Respect from the peers is just like the best feeling when somebody that you admire comes over to your table or whatever and says, you know, hey, I came just to say hi to you because I'm a fan of your work. But you're like, I'm a fan of your work. You know, it is the best feeling. But yeah, sometimes you just kind of want to
until you go home and you're like, I need to pay the rent.
I need to pay rent. Yeah. It is. It's very tough, you know. Yeah. I don't want to end. We're right at about an hour.
But you don't want to end on that.
This is normally, yeah, but I don't want to end on like a depressing note. But
well, the last sentence of that thing is there's wood on the racks and sharp tools by the bench, and guess what? I'm back in my workshop, and what am I going to do? I'm going to start planing some wood and start making some stuff. I've already got a bunch of new ideas, and the rest, whether the dealers ever get back to me with a deal or whether the buyers ever get back to me with a purchase, there's at a certain point you're like, it's out of my hands. It's going to take time. It'll happen or it won't. I'm going to keep building guitars, until I'm so broke I need to work at McDonald's or something.
I think that it's one of those things where you start this process, you go down this path, you become a luthier, whatever, and there's a bit no stopping it at a certain point.
Yeah, there's nothing else I'm qualified to do.
Yeah,
I know. Literally a few years back, I was having a dry patch without too many sales, and so I started looking around for a job and discovered that they wouldn't have me anywhere, like anywhere. That was
I can talk at length about all this.
I guess I better just stick to this lutherie thing because there are no other options.
I like it. That to me is a good note to end on.
Yeah.
I actually like that.
Sorry, you guys are breaking up, or it's cutting out. I can't see or hear very much.
I was saying I think that's actually a good note to end on. I actually like that. Sounds like we must be breaking up more. You're breaking up now. We're losing the end of it. We'll have to.
He's holding very still. We'll see what happens here.
Yeah. We got that pretty solid up until the last second here.
He's frozen.
Yeah. See if we can wait it out, I guess. Not much more we can do.
Yeah.
Oh, there we are.
There
we are.
Yeah. You were just frozen there for a bit. Oh, lost you again.
Yeah, you guys have been frozen for a few minutes now.
Oh, there we go. Okay, cool.
All right, we're back.
We are back. Yeah.
What did I miss?
That'll be so. I'll have to edit that. That's fine. It's towards the end. That'll be easy.
Yeah.
No, I was just saying that I actually like what you said, and that that's that to me is actually a good note to end on. I think. Right.
All right.
Yeah. There we go.
We did it.
Well, thank you so much for doing this. Thank you for coming on the show. I'm an even bigger fan of your work now, talking to you, than I was even before talking to you. And are you doing? You did NAMM. Are you doing any other shows? Like, where can people see you?
I think I'm going to see you in Vancouver, right?
I actually haven't made up my mind about that one yet. Okay. I was there last year.
Yeah.
It was super fun. But it's quite it's a pretty expensive proposition to fly out there with a bunch of instruments. So I haven't quite pulled the trigger on it, but I love the Vancouver show. I'd love to go there again. I also haven't, I'm not going to be doing the Holy Grail guitar show in Berlin this year either, because I did it last time. And I kind of blew the whole budget out of the water.
So it's kind of just
the part.
time to hunker down. Yeah. Well, obviously, everybody can find you at it's sankeyguitars.com.
That's right.
And you've got the Instagram too. Is that right?
I've got Sankey _guitar _ not underscore Sankey _ guitars, and I also have Facebook Sankey Guitars
as well. Yeah,
fantastic. All right. Well,
So check it out. I'm always doing new stuff.
I would encourage
Indeed.
all of our listeners to check it out and enjoy that. All right. That's it. Again, thank you.
That's a wrap.
That's a wrap.
Wrapped up.